Ma'am Leia. Sige po. So we have the walkthrough. Can you hear me, Ma'am Leia? Thank you po. Morning, Ma'am Leia. Para may delay tayo. Sige po. Alright. Opo, parang may delay, ma'am. Natakpan ko yung outing. Natakpan ko pwesto.
May delay ang alin?
Yan, yung audio ko po. I mean, yung pag-deliver ko ng ano po, kanina. Okay. Sige, ma'am. So, I'll be the first.
May delay ang alin?
Oh, yan, yung audio ko po. I mean, yung pag-deliver ko ng ano po, kanina. Lang siya. Okay. Sige, ma'am. So, I'll be the first.
May delay ang alin?
Oh, yan, yung audio ko po. I mean, yung pag-deliver ko ng ano po, kanina. Lang siya. Okay. Sige, ma'am. So, I'll be the first.
May delay ang alin?
Oh, yan, yung audio ko po. I mean, yung pag-deliver ko ng ano po,
Dear Heavenly
kanina.
Father,
Lang siya.
we thank you
Sige, ma'am.
for gathering us
So,
all
I'll be the
today
first.
in this important
May delay ang alin?
event.
Oh, yan, yung
We ask
audio ko
that
po.
you
I
bestow
mean,
your
yung
guidance
pag-deliver
and
ko ng ano
blessing
po,
upon Dear Heavenly
kanina.
Father.
Lang siya.
We thank you for
Connection,
gathering us
Leia.
all
I'll be the
today
first.
in this important
May delay ang
event.
alin?
Dear
Oh,
Heavenly
yan,
Father, we
yung
ask
audio
that
ko
you
po. I mean,
bestow your
yung
guidance
pag-deliver
and
ko ng ano
blessing
po,
upon Dear
yan, nawala na, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Alright, so opening timer ano? Okay. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. May OBB ka pa, di ba? OBB po. Then intro spiel po. The university, blah, 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 blah. Ladies and gentlemen, join us for the invocation to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem. Wala, ma'am. Wala po.
Out of a nightmarish crisis
wala,
by
ma'am.
immersing in conversations worth having. Such conversations see beyond problems, inviting instead a different kind of inquiry that creates out our nightmarish crisis
wala, ma'am.
and is forward-looking conversations worth having. Actions. Such conversation no longer beyond onwards, inviting business as usual different kind of inquiry creates out our nightmarish crisis
wala, ma'am.
and is forward-looking conversations worth having. Actions. Such conversation no longer beyond onwards, inviting business as usual different kind of inquiry creates out our nightmarish crisis
wala, ma'am.
and is forward-looking conversations worth having. Actions. Such conversation no longer beyond onwards, inviting business as usual different kind of inquiry creates out our nightmarish crisis
wala, ma'am.
and is forward-looking conversations worth having. Actions.
Ayan, timer. Balik tayo sa umpisa, ma'am. Sige po. So, timer. Alright. Then, OBB.
The University of Representative System Dalton Las Piñas campus, in partnership with Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development,
Okay.
welcome
Intro spiel. Apo.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us all today in this
Yes, ma'am. To give us an opening remarks.
Good day, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar on organizational development.
This time, may we request everyone to please focus your attention on the screen and let's all watch this.
Dialogic organization development is more than encouraging good dialogues. Dialogic organization development does not prescribe specific models or standards. Rather, dialogic
ma'am.
organization
And to introduce our resource speaker, so welcome Dr. Rosalina Fuentes. Apa. Then Dr. Rose, then speaker. Once again, thank you so much to our resource speaker, blah, 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 blah. And to, okay. Like to, yes, welcome once again the President Loyola Institute, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Then certificate of recognition. Then,
Yun later kasi nga.
okay.
Yun.
Apo, citation. Then photo ops lang with Prof. Eric and Doc Fuentes.
Oo. Okay.
And now, to give us the wrap-up of key points, let us welcome Dr. Rosalina Fuentes.
Okay. Tapos na.
Okay, Apa. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosalina Fuentes. At this juncture, may we request everyone to please focus your attention on the screen and let's all watch this.
Ito yung edited
Yes,
na
ma'am.
to, Doc Fuentes. Sasalpa ko mamaya. Inuna yung graph.
Okay, sige po. Once again, a big round of applause to Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development. And of course, we would like to thank blah, 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 and blah, 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 Dr. Tamayo, extra spiel. All right.
Okay.
Ma'am, meron
Oo.
pa tayong, ayan, yan,
Perpetual
okay.
hymn.
Perpetual help hymn.
Oo.
Okay.
Sige. Okay.
Okay na yung perpetual help hymn mo, ma'am?
Oo, nandito na.
Okay, sige po.
Tapos, start na natin.
Parang wala ba po si Prof. Eric?
Prof. Eric will come later, Aris. Hello, Aris?
Doc Rose, sorry po, wasn't able to hear you po.
Si Prof. Eric is coming later, so I will
Correct.
cover for him.
Okay po.
The University of Representative System Delta Las Piñas campus, in partnership with Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development, welcome to a new way of coming out of a nightmarish crisis by immersing in conversations worth having. Such conversations see beyond problems, inviting instead a different kind of inquiry that creates an empowering and positive environment that is forward-looking and future-forming actions. The world can no longer move onward with its business as usual mindset.
The University of Perpetuity of System Delta has been providing high-quality education for the past 48 years by continuously enhancing its academic programs as it paves the journey of tomorrow's leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to University of Perpetuity of System Delta Las Piñas campus webinar entitled The Power of Dialogic Organization Development in Emerging from a Global Crisis, in partnership with Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development. And to formally start our program, may we request everyone to please join us for the invocation to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us all today in this important endeavor. We ask that you bestow your guidance and blessing upon each attendee. May we honor one another by keeping an open mind. May we voice our truth and listen with an open heart. Bless everyone present today, that each may be able to share his or her contributions and gifts. Grant good health and safety to loved ones left outside this room, and bestow peace and goodwill to all of us. We ask for your wisdom and grace to use our talents for the betterment of others. May the various activities related to this day be a success through your intervention. With gratitude, we offer this prayer in your name. Amen.
And now to give us an opening remarks, let's all welcome the Dean of the Graduate School of the University of Perpetuity of System Delta Las Piñas campus, Dr. Eduardo C. Jalcita.
Good day, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar on organizational development. Such an exciting field. That is what organizational development is all about. In 1980-something, I forgot, I was president of the Philippine Society for Training and Development. A good, almost 40 years ago. At that time, the organizational development concept was relatively new in the market. So we're all so super excited about learning the principles of organizational development. And we did. At that time, professors like David McClelland or Douglas McGregor, Hertzbergs, Abraham Maslow's, of course, Drs. Jane Newton, Spencer Johnson. These are the people that were behind this wave on organizational development. But that was 40 years ago. Today, 2023, we are in the midst of a global crisis. So we're taking this opportunity to look back, review the principles of organizational development and the new thinking on this concept of management. So here we are. We decided to launch a series of modules on organizational development, and this is our first introductory webinar in association with Dr. Rosie Fuentes, a renowned OD practitioner who has been in this business for some time, together with the Loyola Institute for Positive Organizational Development. What an exciting partnership. The University of the Philippines, the University of Perpetual Health Systems, Delta, and the Loyola Institute for Positive Organizational Development brings you this exciting webinar. Organizational development is all about people. And we'd like to always hear this very famous slogan: the people are the greatest assets of an organization. Do we really mean that? Do we really know what it means? But it's not only the people that matter in the organization. Organizational development will take a hard look at other factors affecting organizational efficiency and effectivity. We're going to take a look at the processes, the people, of course, the task, the structure, even the entire environment. So we have divided this webinar into two general categories. One meant for the private sector, the other meant for the government sector. But all in all, we're looking at organizational development as a principle of improving organizational efficiency and effectivity. So today we welcome you to this webinar, and we hope that you will continue enjoying the other modules that will be coming soon after this introductory webinar. Thank you for participating in this adventure with us. In behalf of our chairman of the board, Antonio Laperal, Brigadier General Dr. Antonio Laperal Tamayo, who is a PhD in OD himself, Dr. Daisy Moran Tamayo, also a PhD in OD, our president, Anthony Moran Tamayo, who is also a PhD in organization. So we are surrounded by all PhDs. And of course, the Graduate School of the University of Perpetual Health Systems, Delta, one of the fastest graduate schools in the Philippines today. We're proud of our record number of enrollees, both Filipino and foreign. That number to approximately 2,500 of them. In behalf also of our program chairpersons in the graduate school, our program chairperson for business, Dr. Matias, for education, Dr. Marjo Duritan, for public administration, Dr. Ulysses Brito, for that number to approximately 2,500 of them. In behalf also of our program chairperson in the graduate school, Aguilon, our program chairperson, our assistant dean, of course, Dr. Aiza Alfaro, business, and the many professors for education, Dr. Marjo, who are sharing this knowledge together with our principal, Ulysses Brito, Rosie Fuentes, and the Loyola Institute for Positive Organizational Development. Mabuhay po tayong lahat, and I hope you will learn and enjoy this webinar on to organization development. 2,500. Salamat po. In behalf also of our program chairperson in the graduate school, our program chairperson, our assistant dean, of course, Dr. Aiza Alfaro. Business.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eduardo C. Jalcita. This time, we request everyone to please focus your attention on the screen and let's all watch this.
And the Loyola Institute for Positive.
All right. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Eduardo C. Jalcita. We're having a technical problem right now. And of course, at this juncture, may we request everyone to please focus your attention on the screen and let's all watch this.
Graduate school, our program chairperson, our assistant dean, of course, Dr. Aiza Alfaro. Business.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eduardo C. Jalcita. This time, we request everyone to please focus your attention on the screen and let's all watch this.
And the Loyola Institute for Positive.
Dialogic
Right, so once again, thank you
organization
so much,
development
Dr.
is
Eduardo
more
C.
than
Jalcita.
encouraging
We're having a
good
technical problem right
dialogues.
now.
Dialogic
At this
organization
juncture, we
development
request everyone
does
to
not
please
describe
focus your
specific
attention on the
models or
screen and let's all watch this.
Graduate school, our program chairperson, our assistant dean, of course.
or standards. Rather, dialogic organization development suggests that when allowed or encouraged, methods of conversations, processes of organizing, and ways of leading and following will surface best suited interventions to respond to the needs and situations of the unfolding new realities. The event is meant to give you a tease exposure to organization development as a positive experience different from the usual menu of looking for problems, dysfunctions, gaps, and what ails the organization. The event hopes to give you the pause, awareness, and feel that dialogic organization development has a transforming power to fuel meaningful engagement and productive conversations.
And now to introduce our resource speaker for today's webinar. All right. And to introduce our resource speaker for today's webinar, let's all welcome the president of the Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development, Dr. Rosalina Fuentes. Good morning, Dr. Rose.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the slight technical problems that we experienced. I was also getting confused. There were too many voices. Okay, it happens in the environment. And I think this is the challenge that dialogic organization development is entering into. Before we listen to Professor Eric, let me just put in context this webinar. Can I have a screen share, please? Could you allow me to screen share, Leah?
Yes, Dr. Rose.
Okay,
Go ahead. You may share your screen.
Do we see it already on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. We're talking of dialogic organization development, but maybe some of you, if not all of you, have already heard about organization development, or in short, OD. Okay. This has been going on, this OD thing has been going on since the 1960s. But in the Philippines, it started creeping slowly, starting around the 1980s. San Miguel Corporation is one of the corporations that introduced, pioneered, okay, the practice of organization development in the Philippines. It is important that we first take a quick look, a rapid scan of organization development to contextualize Dialogic OD. Okay, so here's a rapid scan that I prepared for this morning's event. For people who are new in the field, OD is not about creating change. Okay, some people would say, let's create change, let's go OD. That's a misconception. OD is about creating great organizations and the change processes required to get there. Ergo, if it's about creating organizations, then OD must be first and foremost a process to lead, a process to manage, a process to implement the change processes. Somewhere in the past few decades, there began the confusion between means and ends. And I think this is what happened with the arrival of the concept of organization development. So from this slide, important, it is a process. OD is a process, but it's a process engaged in change leadership, in change management, in change implementation, in change sustainability. Okay, let me now go to the next slide. This was giving credits where credit is due. This was a label coined by Bob Marshak and Edgar Schein to a group together where they set OD practices that violate some central tenets of diagnostic OD and change theory. Okay, this is about now dialogic OD. What's the difference between diagnostic and dialogic OD? Let's take a look at their difference. Okay. In instances where change is happening, and whether you are conscious or not conscious about it, change does happen, whether you like it or you don't like it. Okay, something is changing. First of all, in you, in the environment, especially in the environment which is beyond your control. In you, there are times when you can control the change, except the biological changes, of course. Okay. OD thrives in situations where leaders define the changes. Okay. If no one manages the process, the success rate is almost nil. When leaders manage the process, there is 20% success. Okay, let's focus on leadership. However, when you expand the participation in the change process, where the stakeholders participate in the definition of the changes, okay, and no one manages the process, there is a conditional buy-in on leadership. But when there is a management of the process and there is maximum stakeholder participation, there is 90% success. Now, the first column, OD thrives where it is leadership driven. That's more traditional OD, which is what we call now diagnostic OD. Somebody is the expert, maybe the top leader, or maybe an external person identified to define it for the company. So it's driven from the top, and the movement is inward. It looks into. Whereas the other column, the stakeholders have a free more expansive viewpoint. And so there are many pairs of eyes, many lenses looking at the environment. And each one begins to ventilate, convey, express, and then buy in to what needs to be changed. Okay, and this is where dialogic OD thrives. Now, but like everything else, sometimes diagnostic OD works, at other times it don't. Dialogic OD also sometimes may work, and sometimes it may not. Why, Bob? Okay. It's about the mindset. When you go diagnostic, it's like the doctor. There is already an assumption there is something wrong, and so I have to look into the subject, look into the client, look into the environment. So nitty-gritty, you start looking at the squares and boxes and then see what is not working. That's the mindset of diagnostic OD. And then out of 20 boxes that it looked into, 3 are malfunctioning, then the focus of the intervention will be on those 3 boxes. And the assumption of the mindset is that if they fix those 3 boxes, everything will be okay towards the goal of the organization, which is greater efficiency, becoming greater as an organization. So the process that is used in diagnostic OD is probing, investigating the gaps, looking for problems. Many times, for those who are more in tune with the changes in the environment, they combine diagnostic mindset with the dialogic mindset. So you see some interventions where you create group talk, teamwork. What else is there? Town hall meetings. What is the point here? You are creating awareness and spreading awareness across. And that is an aspect of a dialogic mindset. The dialogic mindset is generative. It generates a look and see, and let's act together mindset. Now, any methodology can be used when you are doing change management or change leadership. It can be diagnostic or dialogic. However, you have to look at the different situations and challenges, and you have to look at the mindset that is behind what you're doing. If you try to mix the two, then you can also confuse the whole system. With this event, we hope to increase awareness of the transitioning stage from diagnostic and purely diagnostic to dialogic. Why? Because of the VUCA world. There has been so much talk about the VUCA world. Okay? Why? Because everything is rapidly changing. Okay? Everything is becoming complicated and difficult to comprehend, understand. Then you have also the paradoxical situation in the environment. Sometimes you can control, sometimes you cannot. And there is also the entanglement of process driven by the human interventionist and artificial intelligence. So the transitioning stage is within a context of a very disruptive world. Disrupt here is not used negatively, but it's a world that invites us to start questioning our ways, precisely because they don't seem to fit anymore the new reality, the reality that has been jolted by the pandemic, which up to now has not even concluded itself completely from our journey, life journey. As they say, if we continue to hold on to tried and tested ways, and the world continues to be disruptive, we will find ourselves in the moon, somewhere outside there, someone that doesn't connect. And if your company, if your organization doesn't connect anymore to the environment, especially to your clients, then you can guess the results that you will get. Okay, you will miss targets, you will become fossilized, you become outmoded. The other day, I was on my way to some kind of a story here. I was on my way to the Bureau of Quarantine to get my yellow card for travel, and I had to pick it up from Eastwood. And as I walked from the car park all the way to the BOQ office, I noticed that there were few people around. Then I noticed that there were many vacant spaces closed, and I felt a little bit concerned about the people behind those businesses. And I said, oh, they must be suffering from financial meltdown. So I was talking to myself, and I said, yeah, this is still effect of the disruptive world. Now, what got into me is a mix of emotions. One was I felt nostalgic because my memory of those spaces were alive, full of people. Everything is occupied. There was an array of different shops that you can slide into and out and look and see. So it was nostalgic. Sad for the businessmen behind those businesses, but at the same time, there was an apathy, apathy feeling that I had. One that is hopeful. I wonder what will be the new or the morphed businesses that will come and take over these unoccupied spaces. And I started imagining how it would look like. Plus, of course, the use or the connection with artificial intelligence driven interventions. Now, this is what happens when you transition from a dialogic mindset, from a diagnostic mindset to a dialogic mindset. The diagnostic mindset starts making you look backward, inward and backward. But the dialogic mindset is an invitation for you to look beyond the present, beyond the past, and it gives you a future movement. And notice the emotions that crept into me during the diagnostic mindset that was overwhelming me were negative, nostalgia, a sadness, okay, and a feeling of emptiness. But then when I shifted to looking forward to what's coming next, then I became a little bit more alive. In fact, I became uppity. So that's the transitioning stage that one may have to be more aware during these moments in one's life journey in the post-pandemic reality. Just a very quick scan between the two. What are the notable differences? In a diagnostic OD or traditional OD, okay, organizations are open systems. Okay, there are different systems existing in the environment. And every system has its own structures and processes. In Dialogic OD, organizations are networks of meaning making. Yeah, there are open systems, but within the open systems are necessary connections and relationships so that meaning is made, meaning is formed together. Organizations are cultures and conversations. So one on the left side, diagnostic OD is very technical. Dialogic OD is very relational. Let's move on. In diagnostic OD, emphasis is on changing what people do. Okay, change the behaviors. All right. So you say, okay, let's now change time in and time out schedule. Staggered. For marketing department, it will be 8 o'clock. For the other, this department B, it will be 8:30, etc., so that there'll be no crowding around the time machine. Okay. So that's a behavioral change. In dialogic OD, the emphasis is on what people think. Okay. The magic of this, what people do, behaviors natural to people. When there is a watcher, the behavior is perfect. When there is a checklist, it will have implications, especially on your pocket. The behavior is perfect, desired behavior. But when the watcher or no effect is made on, especially on your pocket, okay, c'est la vie, whatever, okay. But when emphasis is made on the mindset, on how you think, it is sticky. It sticks there, regardless of somebody watching you or regardless of some kind of price for your pockets, etc. In diagnostic, OD change is planned, episodic, more developmental. Kaya, we always say OD project. Change is reduced to a project. There is a beginning and there is an end. In dialogic OD, change is emergent, continuous, tentative, and more transformational. So in change, in diagnostic change, it's almost like, oh, okay, I'm finished with chapter 1. I move on to chapter 2. I move. In dialogic OD, it is floating. Why? Because that's the reality of change. Today, I am like this. I sleep for a while overnight, and tomorrow I may be different. Why? Because I find myself perhaps in a different environment, in a different situation. Today, there are no problems in the office, and so everything is smooth, casual, relaxed. But then following day, there are deadlines to make, and there are people coming, and the whole setting is not in place. The sudden change creates some kind of turmoil, some kind of chaos. So everything becomes tentative. One transforms you in a very relaxed way. The other one transforms you in a very pressured way. Diagnostic OD, change happens after diagnosis and planning, through analysis and problem solving, by executing on leaders' vision and goals. As I said, it's top driven. Change happens in dialogic OD. Change happens while we inquire through changing old and stuck conversations by self-initiated actions from people who have to change. So at every point, when we say, let's take up, okay, this particular issue, when people participate, giving information, sharing information, understanding information about the issue, change is already happening in each one and in the situation. So there is this difference. While in diagnostic OD, everything is focused on the problems, okay? Trying to, just like a woodpecker, put its beak into the hole and keep on digging and digging, digging. Here, it floats with the environment. And as it floats with the environment, then actions, options, alternatives also surface. In diagnostic OD, consultants stay apart at the margins, keeping themselves as partners. So the consultants are more like the conductor in an orchestra. They're there, watching, just watching. In dialogic OD, the consultants are immersed with the clients and are part of the interactions. They are part of the centrality of the intervention, of the process. In diagnostic OD, change process is hierarchical, starting from top to bottom. The change process in a dialogic OD is hierarchical, meaning it starts anywhere and it's spread out. Small team can start it off and then spreads out. Marketing says, okay, this is where we are. And then sales would say, and this is where we are. And top leadership says, this is where we are. And so they kind of look at all of these points of entries and they start spreading out information, interaction, and arriving at possible options. So you can see the mindsets that are involved. Okay. Dialogic OD offers a new narrative of leadership and effective organizing for a VUCA environment. We always say something new, open. But when you hear that, those are keywords. Create a new narrative. Look at it with a different lens. Expand your lens. What it is asking from you is to generate a new image, a new scene, and to move out of where you are and position yourself somewhere in a space beyond the present, which we call now, of course, future. So in terms of interactions, what is my role in the client loop? That's a question for a dialogic mindset. How do I make the biggest contribution? So look at your relationship, your connection to the whole environment. In terms of design of meeting and events, who needs to be in what conversations, in what sequence? So must the janitor be part of the conversation? If he is, bring him in. Must the guard be part of the conversation? If he is, bring him in. In what sequence? It will depend now on what the issue is on the table. In terms of processes, how do we bring the relevant stakeholders into conversations that stimulate relevant self-initiating change projects? When there is a maximum participation of stakeholders and you listen to the conversations, the close listening in to what people say in conversations would if you're the top leader, would show to you categories of participations, categories of issues, categories of minds that come into the conversations. And that's where you filter those stakeholders, scope them into more and deeper conversations about whatever is there on the table so that change projects can surface. So there are two layers there. You watch, you allow people, and then you watch so that you are able to scope those relevant stakeholders. Regardless of the process, dialogic OD methods only work if they do at least one of the following. You stimulate the emergence to create self-initiated change projects from those who must change. In other words, it's not something imposed, it's not something that you decree, it's not something that you mandate, but it's something that it is stimulated and coming out and surface from the conversations. That's one possible method. Okay, and that's one possible effect of a dialogic OD. The other one is change the core narratives. When the stories are changed, not because you want to hide facts, but rather the stories are centered more from gaps, from what you don't have to what you have, then it brings you to a new way of thinking. So for example, oh, we don't have the money for that project. Okay, it's a negative narrative. But then when you say, okay, if there is no money for the project, what are our options to bring about a fund for this project? So if immediately you shift the narrative from one that is inward looking to one that is more generative. And then introduce or uncover a generative image, okay, that allows people to talk, think, and act accordingly. Okay. How do you get sponsorship for Dialogic OD? Align part of them that knows how we normally talk about organizations, and leadership isn't what really goes on. So a mind that says, okay, our leadership does this, boom, 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 boom. Okay, fine. And then what is the other thing that you have to align? Okay, leadership can do more of this, boom, boom, boom. So what they're doing and what more they can do. So there is some kind of an alignment for more generative conversations. And this is where you create an image of general leadership. Make it simple, understandable. Anyone who change needs to be part of the conversation. The people closest to the issue have the best chance of devising a workable solution, and you cannot predict what will happen. So the best strategy is to launch different small efforts and learn as you go. This is where you bring in the idea of small networks, small conversations, creating a culture of participation rather than a culture that cancels out people. Okay, these are some dialogic methodologies. In another event, we will talk about the more dominant dialogic methodologies. And I think you have a lot, okay? But the most talked about nowadays is the open space technology, the future search, and the world cafe. Theory, you also, Sharma, appreciative inquiry. The rest would be some kind of an offshoot of the main dialogic methodologies in the market. Okay, these are the useful resources that you can have, okay, that you can get your hands on. There are some Kindle some digital copies, okay, but some are in hardbound. You can start looking at libraries. I think some books are available at the University of Perpetual Health, some others in big schools. Okay. All right. And lastly, just before I turn over to the proceedings to Professor Eric, if he's here, give me a shout, please. Okay, just the difference again. When you have technical problems, you have to adapt a diagnostic mindset, which is the traditional OD. So look at all of these. But if it's an adaptive challenges where agility, quickness, okay, fitness is most desired, then this is where dialogic OD comes in. So those are landmarks when you ask the question, when may I use diagnostic OD? When may I use dialogic OD? So the question perhaps that you might ask, which one is the better? No, the better methodology is one that uses people as resource, the people, first and foremost, in order to get the desired results. But any methodology that doesn't use the people who are involved in the operations will give you maybe esoteric, will promise you esoteric results, but only for you to realize that this is going to be an uphill climb and perhaps a zero success undertaking. Let me now pause because there is a Q&A here. Can we have a copy of the PowerPoint of the speaker? Okay, thanks. Okay. Let me discuss this with Leah. Yes, I think in some ways I can commit myself to that, but I will have to coordinate with Miss Leah to reach Chu. Did I answer the question, Jeffrey? Give me a sign that I answered your question. Okay. All right. Okay, I got your answer. Okay. Let me pause here. Leah, Aris, is Professor Eric around now?
Yes, Dr. Rose.
Okay, hi. Hi, Eric. I hope I did not rob you of 16 minutes. Okay, so I would now stop share. And if there are more questions, perhaps you can write them in the chat box during the open forum. Is that okay? All right. Thank you. And back to you. Hi, Eric.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Rose. Good morning, Prof. Leah, and to everyone in the room. May I just request for my other device to be allowed to share? Yep. So I'm using actually two devices because the other one has problem with its video. So okay, the other, if you can, tech team, can you allow my other device to share? Thank you. I'll try it again. Okay. Kindly enable sharing for the other Erica. Thank you. There you go.
You may use now the other gadget,
Thank
Prof.
you.
Eric.
All right, there we go. Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. And it's an honor to be invited here to speak with you about Dialogic OD. And yes, of course, from Dr. Rose and of course, my colleague at the Philippine Marketing Association. We call her Chair Leah. Chair Leah, thank you very much for inviting me. And yep, we'll start. So I'd just like to introduce myself. I am a father to two, husband to one, sibling to four other great individuals who are equally, successful professionals. And we are a happy family. And yeah, we're growing because our next generation are being born. And at the moment, I'm a clinical professor and academic program director at the Asian Institute of Management, handling the Masters in Entrepreneurship. I'm a family business advisor on organizational development, and I am with Dr. Rose as a founding member of the International Council for Small Business Philippines. ICSP is present in 191 countries, and our headquarters is located at the George Washington University in the United States. So just to show you that there are actually 2 Asians in the global board of the ICSP, something that we care about for our small business owners in the Philippines. So let me go to my presentation, and I always start my session with this slide, and it says there, no one holds the monopoly of answers to things. And this was spoken by Coach Marshall Goldsmith in the International Coaching Federation. We highly respect Coach Marshall being the #1 executive coach in the world. And 7 years ago, I had a great privilege to join him in a conference in Bangkok, Thailand. And he requested everyone, around 1,000 CEOs in the ballroom, to stand up and raise your right hand. I just need to accede to his request just because he was actually standing in front of me. And when he said these words while we were raising our hands, and he said, "Follow after me." And he said, when there's a question and I don't know an answer to it, all I need to do is ask, and it's okay. And said, you may put your hands down and reflect. So something that was admirable about this man is that while he is considered to be the coach of US presidents, top Fortune 500 companies, he still recognizes that others can actually contribute. And in this class, in this session, we know that it's going to be an interactive one. Later, we will have our Q&A where we can hear some insights, not only from your speaker, but also from the rest of the participants. So hearing the session from Dr. Rose about Dialogic OD, we'd like to ask, from the sphere of my experience in family businesses, in handling organization development, how can we actually apply Dialogic OD? And something that I'm happy to share you with are the experiences that I've had with various clients from all over the Philippines. First off, we'd like to understand what are the common issues that our family-owned and operated businesses face. So we call them FOOB. So the FOOBs normally they start from home as a micro entrepreneur, and as the story goes, most of the tycoons that we are seeing today with large national companies and large national brands have started small. So similarly, we asked some of my clients, and what are the common things that they face? And we're going to discuss them today, and what are the opportunities for improvement. So here are the top 5 that I've gathered from my clients. And #1 is trust. #2 is structure. #3 is discipline. #4, competency and performance. And #5, upskilling their workforce through learning and development. For the purpose of our conversation this morning, I'm only going to tackle 1, 3, and 5. And let's see, how do we actually integrate the principles that Dr. Rose have shared with us as far as Dialogic OD and Diagnostic OD are concerned. First off, for common issue #1 is trust. And let me share with you a story of a matriarch. When we got to meet for the first time, the eldest son, who is the president of the company, was with us, and of course, her husband, who was the patriarch. And within the first 3 minutes, the patriarch and the son stood up and said, "We're going to go to the men's room." And the matriarch was left alone, and she started with this question. Something that I was a bit expecting, because every time I'm with founders, they get to ask me this question. And she said, "Sir, why do we need you? Why did my son hire you as a consultant for our family business?" And she went on saying, my husband and I created this business so that our children will have comfortable lives. However, after 30 years, our children takes over the management of our company, and yet they find it difficult to manage. And those people who started with us 30 years ago are still with the company, and they're having difficulty understanding the directions and how my children manage. So the parents are worried. The veteran employees, they go to the founders when they get to have questions instead of communicating with the children. The children who are occupying president, vice president, general manager, and head of all the departments. And there are actually 5 siblings, right? On the other hand, the children were complaining to me by saying, we're always overruled by our parents. They make their decisions while they have empowered us with titles and all, right? And we don't look good in front of our employees. They don't trust us to make better decisions for the welfare of the company. So this is the story. And by the way, before the father and the son came back to the table, the mother actually opened something and she said, you know what? Entering this mall, because we met in one of the malls in Quezon City. She said, my decision was to sell and close the company or sell it. And I was surprised by that revelation of the matriarch. And she continued, I will just cash in the business and distribute the money to 5 of my children, and they'll be comfortable with their lives, right? Now, we're talking about a business that's nearing 50 years old, right? And yes, for the first 20 years, it's the mother and the father who were in charge of the business. And now they have passed it on to the next generation. So looking at the evolution of trust for family businesses, we would want to understand how they identified authority levels. Was there an endorsement from the parents to the children? Or did they just actually let the children run it without explaining to their employees and hand over properly the empowerment that they have transferred to their children? And were they able to monitor how their children are doing in the new roles? How was the communication between the employees and the new administration, the employees and the founders, the next generation to the founders? Was there a hand-holding process that was made? And later on, granting a full autonomy so that the children will be able to create those decisions that's good for the company. So we'll go on with the next page and ask these questions for this first issue. How can the children, and I'd like to get some insights from the participants. You can use your chat and answer the first one. How can the children who are now managing the company gain the trust of their employees? So let's reflect on this first question. I'll give you 15 seconds. Stop, right, reflect, and after 15 seconds, hit the button, and let's see some insights from the class, what your thoughts are as far as how the children can actually gain the trust of their employees. All right, 15 seconds starts now. And I'll go to the chat. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So press the enter button and get your insights read. So what do you think? What can the children do to be able to get the trust of their employees? So can we actually do that and see the responses of everyone? Okay, so let me enlarge this. If it's possible to be able to see the insights of our class. All right. Okay. Practice good corporate governance. Yes. So thank you, Chair Leah. So yeah.
That's from Felipe
Felipe
III
del
del
Rosario.
Rosario.
Thank
Yes,
you very
sir.
much. All right. Chair Leah, will they be able to post it directly or? Right. Okay.
It's in the Q&A box, sir.
Oh, so it's in the Q&A box. Okay,
Yes, sir.
sorry for that. Okay, let me go there. Okay, continuing the legacy of their parents. Yes. Okay. So I see a hand raise. Yeah, you may unmute yourself. Okay. All right. So someone's asking if you can have the PowerPoint. Yep, we'll discuss that later with our organizers. Okay. So something that is important for founders and next generation to have is to be able to transition properly. And different families actually have different modalities in terms of managing the company. And it's not automatic that the children would have the same style as their parents did. But what's more important is how do they communicate this to the employees, especially if there are veteran employees who saw the children grew up. And for this company, they do actually have employees who stayed as long as 20, 25, 30, 35 years. And now they're under the management of the children that they saw growing up, right? So this has no specific template, no specific formula on how to do this. And this is where our Dialogic OD would come in terms of how will they co-create the new culture with the entry of the new management team, which are comprised of children, 5 children who are not necessarily young because they are within their late 30s to mid 40s. So these are not exactly young next gen. These are matured professionals who are taking on the challenge of their parents to be able to continue the legacy. Now, another question goes, what should be the mindset of both the founders and the next generation towards each other when we're talking about trust? And this is where the family would sit down and craft the roadmap for growth, while the founders set up the company for their children to be able to have comfortable lives in their future, seeing grandchildren grow up as well. A company that has stayed long enough for 2, 3, 4 decades, and it's not about them anymore. It's about the customers who are loyal to their company, who buy their products, who would now dictate who the company should be to be able to serve customer needs better. So that may be a marketing aspect leading towards customers, but then again, in terms of managing the company, from founders to next generation, something that they need to sit down, create the structure. We read earlier in terms of family governance or good governance. On the family business, on their side, create the family council, then draft their family constitution with the help of the experts to be able to put in all the stipulations. And when they get to that point that they all agreed on how they will manage, what are the parameters that will guide the behavior of the family members, whether they're the next generation or even the founders. And there, the mutual trust that is set within a very thin line, or whether you are facing a family member as a family or facing a family member as a co-worker in the organization. When this is done and solved, they now face the community, the family in the form of their employees. Because something unique for Filipino family businesses is that They would love to promote the family concept in terms of managing the business. That's why when you get to compare how multinationals or large Filipino conglomerates operate, something that is very popular for family businesses is that we have the family spirit. But then again, they fail to communicate that in a way that is professional. Yes, there can be a way to make it professional and yet maintain the family spirit. And it doesn't need to take a company like what we have here on this first issue that has stood time for almost 40 plus years, going 50 years. So even those who have recently started, 3 years, 5 years, middle like going 5 to 10. And even if they have lesser employees than this company that has around 200 employees. And now they're transitioning their professional management from the veteran employees that the parents had to more professionals in the pipeline. So trust begins with founders going to next gen and getting the trust of all the employees through co-creating a new culture, right? And this is apart from establishing or reviewing the vision, mission, goals of the organization. Because you're looking at the next gen, managing for the next 10 to 20 or even more years. Let's now go to the next common issue, which is discipline. And here we have a story of a veteran employee, and let's just name her Maria. Maria is a trusted employee. And why is it so? For 28 years, she and her family was the only family who have that privilege to live within the premises of the manufacturing plant or the factory, so to speak. However, Maria has this, negative attitude of, interfering, sabotaging work of fellow employees. And this has been running for so many years. So many years that 4 years ago, one new employee complained that her report was actually missing. And to her surprise, this new employee found her report shredded and thrown in another wastebasket. And you'd probably say, wow, whoever did that is an amateur. Why do you need to throw that in a trash can within the premises of the office? So it was found out that Maria was the culprit, and she was subjected to the due process of the human resources, and it led towards the last stage of the process after 4 weeks of discussion, investigation, and all of the incident reports. And the HR, when they were confronting Maria with the final notice of dismissal, Maria went to the restroom and called the chairman. And she said, "Chairman, they're ganging up on me." And this is what she got from the chairman. Well, Maria, we now have a new discipline system, and you have to be accountable for your actions. Conclusion, Maria was terminated for just cause. After 28 long years, after being trusted and having her family stay in the premises of the factory. But wait, that's not the only benefit that she got. She had her husband works for the company. Her children has free tuition fee. They don't spend for electricity and water. They have free food. I guess the only thing they need to spend for are their toiletries. So what happened to Maria? That's something that we will go through later. And that's a bit sad story. But looking forward to the discipline system, and when Dr. Rose said earlier, diagnostic OD will be applied in terms of what's the general rules for due process, implementing corrective action, implementing the provisions of your code of conduct, crafting and revising your code of conduct as well, and educate employees on the impacts of the system. And you begin to ask, how should the employees appreciate compliance to policies and rules? What mindset should the chairman have, or the chairman had, when he replied to the veteran employee? What triggered the employee? What triggered Maria to commit these violations after being trusted? Or you'd say, she's the right-hand person of the owner. And how do we actually avoid this? First and foremost, the rules are there not to imprison employees. That's why my question is, how should we appreciate it? Similarly, for our constitution in the Philippines, we have laws, criminal laws, that guide us not to do the wrong thing. And in family businesses and even in large companies, employees must see these rules in a way that it's there, but it's not going to punish you every day. It's not out there to kick you out of the job. And more so for those who are doing the right thing at work, for those who are actually performing, they should be the first ones to embrace this and say, we are protected, right? And management, something I would say as a wrong interpretation within the family business scene. When we get to craft their own code of conduct, I heard in one company that people are afraid because the children now would have a tool to kick them out of work. And I said, this actually also applies to your bosses, right? This is not only for you. This is also going to cover them. And more importantly, they have another version in the family constitution that would confront family members who are violating rules. So when you get to communicate this in such a way that employees would trust the system, the discipline system will not be there to trouble them. Because every time we get to introduce this to companies, even if they have been there for, I experienced this to a company who's by today 75 years, and they're located in Western Visayas. So looking at this, do family businesses need order? Do they need these rules to guide how they work with one another? And does it always have to be a weapon for management, for owners against employees? How do they actually subject themselves to these policies that they created, right? And this is where your dialogic OD would come in, not being too bookish about the laws and the rules, but be able to interpret them in a way that the employees appreciate the impact of the wrong things that will be done by certain people in the company. That's why I've always said in the HR practitioners should be more developmental rather than punitive in terms of, implementing the COC and your tables of penalty, right? That's why in other companies, especially in family businesses, two departments that are very close into the heart of the owners are, number one, you would second guess this, yes, finance. And number two is human resources. And I highly advocate for family members, either one of them learn the skills of being a human resources practitioner or get professionals to handle this for you, right? Because most of them ask me, when's the right time to actually have human resources. And what level do we need to hire? Can we hire our newly grads? So unfortunately for them, they only consider human resources as the one doing payroll or doing the memos if someone violates the rules. So let's go to the next issue, which is learning and development. From the perspective of the owner, developing people is an expensive task to do. It's just cost center. And these are only for large companies, probably multinationals, because they have the budget. And for our business, we're small, and most would not stay long. They would leave anyway. And it's a waste of my money to invest in people. Our children, we send them to good schools. We send them to Ivy League schools. And that's good enough for them. When they get to finish their college, they join their family business, and that's okay. So we want to understand, why is it important that we consider a budget for learning and development? And again, within my sphere in family businesses, or even for entrepreneurs, where do they actually look for continuing education? And different sources, whether it's coming from the academy or where we are here in University of Perpetual Health, whether you get it from the traditional entrepreneurs, the founders themselves, who would share their expertise, their wisdom, and their tips on how to be like them, staying long in the business. Today, there are plethora of resources online, and most of them are free. But the question is, how do you actually curate and make it relevant for your company? And lastly, there are groups who advocate for continuing education, and they do this for free. So there are different platforms to get professional continuing education. And for companies who would say, this is important to us. This is important for our people, for our family, for our employees, that would redound later to the benefit of our employees. But still the question is asked, why do family businesses shy away from learning and development, from allowing their children and employees to undergo continuing education? And how should employees, whether they're professionals or family members, appreciate continuing education? Sadly, I've observed in certain, not all, family business that I handle, there are employees who've been there for 20 years and still doing the same thing, same job that they started with 20 years ago. And the reason is that I'm old. I will not go to higher positions anymore. I'm happy with the family. I've seen the family grow, and I've seen my family grow. I'm happy where I am. And that's it. And I'm going to retire after 5 to 10 years with the same job. But there are employees who gets to question their existence in family businesses and say, I've seen the business grow, but only the business and not me and my colleagues. So the question is, how can management of family businesses co-create that growth path, that growth roadmap for their employees, so much so that after they've spent 10, 15, 20, 30 years of their career in a family business, they would say, I've spent the best of my years in this organization. Yes, we are not a big multinational. Yes, we are not a big local company, but I've spent it beautifully in this organization. And I wish for my children to be the same. Right? So these are the things that management and employees can actually co-create. And I've seen this happen successfully. And later, after discussing these three issues, I would show you some pictures on how we did it beautifully and not too technically. When I say not too technically, it depends on what is available. What are the available resources for the organization? Having to see people from rank and file rise to the supervisorial role, and having some of them become candidates for entry-level managerial roles. For most multinational and large companies, they do understand this profile on how we actually integrate leadership with strategy, looking to satisfy customers, and being undertaken, implemented by the workforce. And in between, we actually measure performance. Again, going back to the sphere of family businesses, this is what I advocate for them to be able to customize the approach in measuring performance. So within the next coming slides, I'll show you how we did it and approach our customers, our clients differently. And you're seeing veteran employees because they're not young anymore. They have a mixture of employees. You may see that the office is cramped. Yes, it's cramped. And you're seeing the time. It's, I think, after lunch, 2 p.m. And this was 5 years ago. Not in Metro Manila, though, where they began to realize, oh, I've spent my 20 years in the organization. I want to spend another 10 to 15 more. When they were actually doing a vision board on self-actualization using Crayolas. And we're not using, high-tech gadgets. We're using bond papers for them to express themselves and share their thoughts. And when we had this recorded and shown this to the founders and their children who are managing the business, they understood where these employees are coming from. And when Dr. Rose mentioned earlier what the consultant's role must be, are you either a conductor or either you're in deep dive, immersed with the people, so much so that when you walk around the compound, the office, the factory of your client, you're not seen as the person who, we have a funny call for ourselves. So sultans, in Tagalog, we just do sulsul, taga-sulsul sa may-ari or what they're supposed to do. But something that I was able to do is a deep dive. And that deep dive has gone to the level of the rank and filers for them to appreciate what's about to come. And that's what I call a two-pronged approach. While we are doing high-level planning and strategizing with top management, we are reorienting people down below. So when they get to implement it, everybody is on board. And that's what you call co-creation of the journey. You have here a pahinante and a driver on the left, and a salesperson and a warehouse guy on the right. Doing what? Their own fishbone analysis. You may say, what? How can they do that? When the chairman of this company actually saw the video, he was almost in tears. And he said, how can my pahinante do this? The one in the headband. How can he actually say this? The modality is the key. Concept that we know, you might think that these people will not be able to understand. It depends on how you actually deliver the sessions with them and the importance of these concepts towards their work. And when they do the right job, when they do the right thing, what's in it for them, right? So still you're seeing, old dinosaur approach of having a Manila paper and a pentel pen. And when they do actually undergo the process, you will see the appreciation. They're involved. They're talking about it. And if I spend 3 days in the region, you're still going to hear what they did on the first day. And before I fly back to Manila, they would say, thank you for that new approach. Something beautiful even for the children of owners or even the conglomerate of cousins is that you join them in their journey for the transformation. And even while these children and a plethora of cousins have studied in good universities here in Manila, the dynamics will be different when they work with each other. Thus, you're seeing here third generation doing a session, first time for themselves together. So co-creating it with them and hand-holding them towards the process of knowing who can they become and knowing how they can be appreciated by their parents. This is a company run by 4 siblings, second generation, and now we're seeing 8 third generation managing different departments. But the question 4 years ago was, how are they going to transition? And these exercises that you're seeing that they've experienced 4 years ago was something new to them, right? So going through the journey together, having this exercise week on week for the last 2 years, and even the executive committee is mama and papa and uncle and auntie. Right? So operationalizing what they learned. But something happened with this team. Something that they saw was there, but never realized it was the teamwork among plethora of cousins. And they belong to different families. Right? So something beautiful. It wasn't a formula born out of a theoretical concept. They found about it. They realized that they can actually spread it. There are almost 300 plus employees in the plant. And on the right side, you would say, you know, when we did that orientation on the left side, I remember someone was brave enough to comment in Tagalog. Hindi totoo yung mga sinasabi ni consultant. Walang mangyayari dyan. Somebody was brave enough to stand and make that remark. So how do you actually get the buy-in of the entire 300 plus in 3 different shifts? One thing was to get all their leaders to a joint meeting. So you see on the right, there are 3 different colors: green, red, and lime. These are people representing different shifts. And we explained to them. We co-created the journey with them. They were the ones who crafted what needs to be learned and needs to be followed, instead of just putting there a book and says, this is your new code of conduct. You'll probably realize that while this is a factory, no one was actually wearing safety devices. And after 5 months, you know, August, September, October, November, December. In December, all of them are wearing safety hats, reflectorized vests, and safety shoes. Nobody was getting cut their fingers anymore into the machineries. People were smiling often, not complaining about, you know, even the heat within the factory. So they've had more supplies in terms of uniform. All of the pledges of management were provided, so much so that in Christmas, everybody experienced it differently. Something that you need to activate, not only from the top, but also from the bottom, and make them meet in the middle to be able to execute things differently. Learning with their peers is something that was new to this team. And this company has a very, how do I call it? Lean structure, where it's family owned and managed, and there are no supervisors. There are no managers. So from owner to family, then rank and file. So what we actually did was create leadership circles while there are no ranks. Everybody are leaders. There are 3 shifts with 10 lanes. So we actually called for leadership meeting. So a representative per line of the 10 lines and 3 shifts. You would wonder how many these people are. They're around 200 some 8 years ago. And something beautiful was that even while they declared that most of them have not gone to college, most of them are high school, some are not even high school graduates. So you would wonder, how do we actually improve the performance of these people? So we introduced peer learning. Not only learning from consultants like yours truly or the owners, but themselves towards how they're doing their respective work. Themselves on how they're achieving or not achieving the targets. It wasn't an easy journey. It took us around 3 cycles to be able to, create that, for lack of better words, ideal team. We had fallouts. We experimented. And yes, it took a while, but at least a year and a half, going 2 years. And yes, we were able to promote team leaders. And in the journey, we were able to identify top performers for the year. And something great on the right one, of course, Dr. Rose, you know our friend here. And the number 1 employee was actually deaf-mute. And we have 30%, we introduced 30% employees who are coming from deaf and mute. Something beautiful that happened in this organization was that for this year of 2018, JB bested 199 more employees to become employee number 1. Something that they thought wasn't possible when they actually introduced the new group in the manufacturing. So on the left photo, you're seeing a combination of the hearing and the deaf. Something that was beautiful. And this organization has always been my example for transforming on how they do things beautifully. Right? And for most family businesses, whether they are small in structure or large, it's always beautiful to see how can they customize the approach in terms of managing their business. But wait, there's more. This organization actually streamlined its operation while achieving 33% increase in production efficiency and more volume for its customers. So something fantastic that the people did not realize they were achieving more. And at one point, I remember some of them, signed the petition because they're complaining about their new quota. And when we actually went to their workplace and doing the numbers, they were actually surprised that they were actually performing more than what was set as the quota. So the problem here was that, people are more emotional than rational. But when you get to go down to the level of explaining how it is, then they were challenging themselves more, and they were saying, now we realize and you can actually increase the quota more so that we can have more incentives, right? So a different approach for different sets of organizations and different levels of employees in not only in family businesses, but for more companies, even larger ones, to learn for these experiences. So in summary, what would every business love to have? People who trust one another, they are organized, they're disciplined, they're moving forward, they have developmental mindsets, and at the end of the day, it's a happy workplace to be in. Sharing your experiences with your coworkers and your superiors and management, whether it's family business or a straight corporation. And having to say at the end of the year or at the end of your career that you've spent beautiful years in this organization. So with that, I end my presentation. I'd like to thank all of you for listening to me. This is Eric Kaig, and maraming salamat po.
Right. Once again, thank you so much to our resource speaker, Professor Eric Kaig. Maraming salamat, Sir Eric. And now, to facilitate the Q&A and the open forum, we would like to welcome once again the President of Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development, Dr. Rosalina Fuentes. Rose?
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Eric. That was a very informative, relaxed presentation. And just to highlight, the man who spoke before you, Professor Eric, you can see that by his examples that were cited during the presentation, Dialogic OD was really in action. He did not have to mouth the esoteric title, Dialogic Organization Development. But in effect, if you look at the practices and the principles that were presented about the concept, he came alive with dialogic processes. Okay, that said, we now open the forum for questions. Remember, there are always many answers to questions. Sometimes you ask a question and you may know the answer better. Okay? All right, let's have there. Felipe has a question for Professor Eric. It is in the chat box. Your thoughts on the seemingly expected succession of children taking over instead of a senior professional employee is the underlying reason for the trust issue.
Well, thank you, Mr. Del Rosario, Felipe, for that question. Yep, for most founders, something that they have identified on early is that finance will always be something close to the chest of the family. While that may serve their purpose in terms of protecting their interest, when we get to inspect how they get to optimize their financial resources, is something that when they see the aha moment, for example, most family businesses would have either a family member, a distant relative handle finance, and that's just about getting the books in order for compliance to BIR and making sure that money in, money out in the bank is recorded. But when we go towards optimizing the value of their financial resources in terms of investing, in terms of seeing 5 to 10 years from now, how much would these financial resources be? That's where their aha moment comes out and say, we need help, right? And trust issue, yeah, it's something foundational. Just because I said earlier, the purpose of creating that business was solely for family reasons. But today they need to be awakened that it's not about them anymore, because it's their customers who will require them to be different, to become different. And as we said earlier, that Dialogic OD is about looking at an organization, how to become more agile, not being, very technical about how they do things, right? So in terms of succession, there are two things that family businesses struggle with. Number one is ownership succession. And number two is professional management succession. It's something that we can advocate, that we do advocate for, is that if their family members are not competent enough to run it professionally, be owners. you can set direction and let your professional managers run the show, right? And in one instance, one family member said, "This is nice. I may have lost my salary, but I still own part of the business, right? But he can actually do more things for himself and his family." So yes, that's something that family business founders should be able to learn on how to bridge the trust towards professional uh, co-workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Eric. Next question is from Carlo Ake. What are some of the key challenges corporate organizations commonly face when implementing organization development initiatives, and how can they effectively overcome these challenges?
Well, number one, I would say is the buy-in, because while leaders have good intentions on the changes that they wish for the people in the company to embrace, when they fail to explain the why, the purpose, the benefits, and they want to go to the route of being very formal in terms of creating a direction in a planning session and announcing it to a town hall without necessarily involving them. When I say involved, even if there are quite few members in a team, at least get the insights of at least of the supervisory role. So when I mentioned earlier that my approach was or is to my clients is that we do top level management planning, but we also do deep dive. And I'll say 9 out of 10, we succeed in implementing these with less doubts or complaint from everyone in the organization. So again, it's communicating, it's inclusive, it's inclusivity, and something that organizations, not only family businesses, should not be afraid of, right? So, I earlier on in my professional career, I've been with multinational brands, and this is something really absent because we really do have a template of managing things based on our regional headquarters. Something that we fail to localize in terms of approach. That's why you would hear that turnover is high, motivation is low, productivity is low. Right? So these are the common things. I would start on the buy-in and cultivate it from there. Thank you.
A very interesting response, Professor Eric, because here, when the keywords would be buy-in, okay, and then purpose. See, oftentimes the purpose is in the mind of the founder or the top leader because he has a helicopter view of the situation. However, he has to allow a process that will create a deep dive, okay, for from the least to the most important members of the organization. Very important emphasis that was made by Professor Eric. Here's another question from Gia Bohol. What are the current trends to develop and retain a talent? Okay, the much about talent management concept nowadays.
Well, I would say there's no silver bullet. While we see some trends right now in this economy where you see more, the gig economy has risen, and you're seeing more employees doing the route of being part-time more than full-time. And There are different functions in the organization that are outsourced, right? So you're talking about before for marketing departments, they would engage a full-blown agency. And now they will engage an influencer for social media, another group for another requirement for the marketing department. So here you're seeing a new generation of talents that are for hire, but not on a full-time. And soon there will be an organization that will be composed of more part-time than full-time employees, and yet you're hitting your numbers. Just because the younger generation are more inclined to use technology to their favor, but still contribute to the requirements of corporate and even family business clients, right? So this is a mixture. We are transitioning towards the traditional to a new order of generation of talent that will help us with what we need in the workplace. So you'd be surprised on how much they actually also price themselves, right? Because before, how long would it take for someone, 20 years ago to reach 6 figures? Today, you're seeing people less than 30 years old with 7 figures. So when I said earlier, there's no silver bullet, it really depends on, number one, on your industry. But if you look at the foundational of retaining talent, number one, as I would say, you make them feel that you actually care for them. Because there are people who would say, I may not be receiving the highest of salary, but I know my company cares for me. And that was very loud 2 years ago, in 2020 and 2021, when a McKinsey report said that employees are looking for more care from their company ever than before. When you say care, it's not only about giving them more benefits and higher salaries. It's about how they're communicated with. It's how about they are treated, right? Also, the pandemic has shown not only the resiliency, but how other companies can be so opportunistic. Because there are people who are brave enough to go to work and they'll be assigned multiple roles. And one employee that I actually spoke with was about to give up. Just because he's showing loyalty, he's showing resiliency, and yet he's tired. And it wasn't enough, right? So today, when we're talking about post-pandemic and how do we actually retain talent, still you want to show your people that you care for them. And of course, employees would be happy to see that their payslip bear additional zeros and commas, right? So that's one thing that you would want to inculcate in talent management. Something that other companies see as a soft side to management. But on my end, I saw how powerful it is for other organizations who embraced it. That's all. Thank you.
Actually, what Professor Eric presented is supported by research. See, many of us oldies think that when the new generation move in and out of jobs, it is because they are chasing money. They're after the money, okay, highest bidder. So that there was a research conducted by McKinsey. And to find out what can keep the new generation loyal to their jobs. Money is only number 3. Number 1 is relationships, especially exhibited by the leaders.
Yeah.
When the relationship is positive, life-giving, creating opportunities for them for better self-expression, that one connects with the new generation. The next question is, how can one reconcile the requirements of Dialogic OD, that is to effect change from people needing the change against self-serving solutions that will be devised by the very same people? Medyo may pitik itong tanong na to, Professor Eric.
Yeah. Number one, for the people concerned to effectively change and transform, I would come in with 3 letter A's. First, there is awareness with the person that she or he is not performing well, or has violated something else, or is not contributing or being valuable to the organization. That awareness should not stop there. It should be followed by acceptance that I need to do something. And that acceptance should not stop from admitting that I need to do it, but the last A should come in immediately. And what's the roadmap for action? What's the intervention needed? When you have a self-confessed individual who wants to say, I want to transform, I need to do this differently, I want to stay in my job. I relate this to the other question in the chat when you said, how do you actually manage effective organization? My question, I would replace that to say, how do you actually co-create an effective organization? And even while there are not too plenty of, because I've been asked this question, to be able to have a great organization, do we need to, to hire the brilliant ones, the Latin honors? I respect those a lot, highly. We are in an education system, but then again, for companies who are not lucky enough to have financial resources to hire, professionals who are in those leagues, how do you actually co-create something of, equally a deadly organization that can, we've heard about this culture, its strategy for breakfast, right? So for those people who would realize that they need to change, and you said here, against a self-serving, not unless that vulnerability that would lead them to realize that I need to change, and that is honest, that has integrity in that sense of the word. Otherwise, I've always said this before, because the owners always ask me, is this going to work? Will our approach work, or are we going to waste time and money? And my response to one founder was that I'm not extending my contract. If you want to fire me today, I'm willing to go. But I'm telling you, it's not an overnight thing. Because some owners might think like, the consultant is just trying to also have his own self-agenda by providing these techniques, right? But then again, looking at the results, and yes, there was one self-serving. I would accede to this question, because there was one within the team that we made as team leaders. When we did the performance evaluation, you wouldn't believe this. She actually failed everyone 3 times in 3 different departments. And her response to us, I go, how come nobody passed? And she used it so beautifully by saying, oh, you said we need new standards, and these standards are higher. Unfortunately, no one met the standard, so I failed all of them. So after 3 rounds, we discovered that she was power tripping. And in the end, and to my bleeding heart, When you get to mentor someone and finally see that she has gone out of her head, she has to be the one to go. And we actually let her go. Right? So yes, I agree with you. It sometimes can be self-serving, but you need to be on guard in monitoring these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Eric. I think that was the last question for the day. Am I correct, Aris?
Yes, Dr. Rose.
Okay, and back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Rose Fuentes, and of course, to our resource speaker, Professor Eric Kaeg. So we'll now proceed to the awarding of certificates of recognition to our resource speaker. So let me read the citation. University of Perpetual Health System Delta Las Piñas Campus, in partnership with Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development. This certificate of recognition is hereby presented to for his selfless effort as keynote speaker during the Power of Dialogic Organization Development in Emerging from a Global Crisis, given this 14th day of June in the year of our Lord 2023 at the University of Perpetual Health System Delta Las Piñas Campus via Zoom, signed Dr. Rosalina O. Fuentes, founding president of the Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development, Dr. Eduardo C. Jalcita, Dean of the Graduate School of the University of Perpetual Health System Delta Las Piñas Campus. Once again, a big round of applause to our resource speaker, Professor Eric Kaeg. Woo. And of course, we'd like to ask Dr. Rosalina Fuentes and Professor Eric for a photo opportunity. Okay, so bring out your best smile, Professor Eric, together with Dr. Rose Fuentes. Okay, one more. Ready? 1, 2. Bring out your best smile. Okay, maybe can we also ask Ma'am Leah, Dr. Aiza Alfaro, together with Dr. Erickson Matias, to join us on a photo opportunity. Doc Matias, Ma'am Leah. Okay, once again. Okay, may we ask Dr. Matias to open your video cam? Dr. Matias, are you still there? Okay. Ma'am Leah, are we ready? Let's have. Okay, ready? One more. Bring out your best smile. Ready? 1, 2. All right. There you go. And of course, we'd like to remind all our participants that you'll be receiving your certificate of participation via email. All right. So please wait for your certificate of participation. And now, to give us the wrap up of key points, let us all welcome back Dr. Rosalina Fuentes. Dr. Rose?
Thank you. Dr. Aris, is it possible to have one shot of the entire gallery?
Sure, sure. I just don't know if, are you referring to our participants?
Yeah.
Okay, are they allowed to open their video cam, Ma'am Leah?
Right now, before I do the summary. Nakamute ka,
Leah, I can hear you.
The arrangement of the platform is on a webinar type. It's at a meeting type, so the attendees are not shown on cam.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ash.
All right. So they will remain faceless at the moment.
Yes.
Okay. Very quickly now, I will give a summary of the proceedings within the context of the corporate setting, as we have learned from Professor Eric. And these were his key points. Okay. He was very emphatic on the processes that happens in a corporate setting. And the highlight of these processes is this, that it is person-driven. Every person in the company is engaged because this will facilitate the buy-in for the movements that the organization will undertake. The next point that he emphasized, which is very dialogic, is be part of the client's journey. You may be an outsider, an external consultant, but then you have to shed off your externality. You have to be part of the journey. Why? Because this is where the trust comes in. If you continue to remain external, the trust issue is always there, floating as bubbles in their minds. But when you deep dive, as he said, into the journey, then you are as human as they are. Both of these 2 points at the moment will help co-create what is desired by the environment. What is desired in terms of pathways, what is desired in terms of articulating the shared goals, and the movements towards the shared goals. Then another point that he emphasized regarding the process is the one that allows the change to happen. It does not wait until the last moment or until the last day of engagement of the external consultant. Rather, the process begins and carries on across everyone, across the system. So change happens simultaneously, which is a principle that reminds me of appreciative inquiry, the principle of simultaneity. When making changes, okay, the dialogic process, opting for simple structures, will open surprises for all. Why? Because simple structures will focus less layers. And when there are less layers, then leadership opportunities abound from bottom to top, all the way. When structure is simple and there are less layers, you learn, the whole environment seemingly compels everyone to learn from one another. I have something to contribute. What more can I contribute? And this is where you relate with each other. The important point to remember, yes, the process is not a quickie process. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens like when you are cooking suman, slow fire. If you cook suman with very strong fire all at once, the suman will not taste good. But when suman is cooked with slow fire, then you have surprising results. Okay? Small can be beautiful. When simple structures are small and less, you have beautiful results, as shown by the case that he has demonstrated. And the last point that I'll take, the two last points that I'll take is the shifting of lenses from big picture to small picture, from the minds of the founders and the top leaders to the minds of the least persons in the organization, from surface information to deep dive into this information. That is very dialogic. That is also diagnostic. So sometimes you don't see the lines are blurred. It comes naturally. And this is what is encouraged by the power of dialogic organization, that you don't remain technical, but you kind of flow, allow the flow, so that the organization environment becomes a natural, life-giving environment. Well, all of those that I have mentioned are important. This one I will overly emphasize because this was triggered by the question during the open forum that gave us a kick. Okay, important for everyone is the North Star, the values that we abide by, the values that we stand for, the values that we share. It is true that when you are in an organization, you don't share all the values that you have with them. That is true. But you can pluck out those values that are part of you and the values that the organization has, and then see if there is a common ground. And this is the common ground that you will thrive, that you will grow into, so that you become a real contribution to the corporation or to the organization. That's the power of dialogic organization. It doesn't belong only to the organization. It belongs to everyone in the organization. Given the right values and the right environment and the right processes, okay, everyone can make the organization powerful. Thank you. I think back to you. Did I give justice to your presentation, Professor Eric?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, what a great key points that you have presented po, Dr. Rose. Thank you so much. And of course, to our resource speaker, Professor Eric Caig, maraming salamat po. At this juncture, may you request everyone to please focus your attention on the screen and let's all watch this. All right. Once again, a big round of applause to Loyola Institute of Positive Organization Development. And of course, we'd like to thank our resource speaker just for day one. So you have day 2 and day 3, Professor Eric Caig. Maraming salamat po. And of course, to Dr. Rosalina Fuentes. Thank you so much to our tech team, headed by Ms. Leia Cerisi, Chua, CPM. Great job, Ma'am Leia, together with Ms. Carla Bautista and Mr. Ramil Condeno. And to all our participants from Zoom and from our official Facebook page, University of Perpetual Health System Data, Las Piñas Campus. Maraming salamat po. We would like to remind all our participants via Zoom, so please do not forget to fill out the evaluation form that was sent to your email address, all right? So that you can also get your certificate from us. On behalf of our Chief Executive Officer, Chairman of the Board and Founder, Dr. Brigadier General Antonio Laplatamayo, our CB Chair and Co-Founder, Dr. Daisy Morantamayo, our University of Perpetual Health System Data President, Dr. Anthony Jose Morantamayo, and our Perpetual Health Medical Center President, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Antonio Morantamay, would like to thank each and everyone for gracing this invitation. This has been your host, Aris A. Anchola, saying, just like what John C. Maxwell said, the single biggest way to impact an organization is to focus on leadership development. There is almost no limit to the potential of an organization that recruits good people, raises them up as leaders, and continually develops them. And of course, before we end with pride and confidence, all together, let us sing the perpetual help hymn. Be proud, Perpetualites! Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Once again, we would like to remind all our participants to please do not forget to answer our evaluation form. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Eric, Doc Rose. Maraming salamat po, Doc Aiza, Doc Matias,
Thank you,
Leia.
Professor Eric.
Thank
Okay.
you, Dr. Ross. Chair Leia, thank you.
Thank you, Aris, and thank you, Leia. Thank you,
Our
Dr.
pleasure,
Aiza.
ma'am.
Okay.
Our
So,
pleasure po.
Okay. May I suggest, Lei? Pwede tayo
Ma'am, I will just exit the attendees for a while. Thank you.
sige.
Wait lang po.
Dr. Ross, thank you.
Salamat. Maraming salamat. Dr. Eric, meron kang ibibigay sa akin na number, ha?
Una na.
Pakisagot yung aking email.
Sige po, sige po. Thank you.
Okay.
See
Alright,
you.
salamat. Okay.
Ma'am, may event tayo next week sa Glorieta. Please mark your calendar. June 21, 22, or 23. Kung saan ka pwede doon, bumisita sa Makati. Thank you. I'll send you a poster. Thank you, Patis Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Salamat. Thank you.
All
Pwede
right.
ka na po. You can leave and then take your lunch.
Oh, I have a 1 o'clock.
Pakisagot yung request ko dun sa email.
Ano po. Thank you po. Thank you.
Okay. Salamat. Dr. Aiza?